Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
Vegas Take coming your way live here from the beautiful Valley. It is Chris Wynn in for Brian Shapiro along with J.D. Sharp, getting you set for your weekend. So much going down, J.D., from a sports perspective. As we got fight weekend coming up. We got a nice, big fight between Kovalev and Canelo. You've got, a nice UFC 244 going down with Nate Diaz featured there. Of course, all the NFL, college football, and also NHL and NBA action going down as well, too. The NBA kind of getting into, full swing for the regular season here. So interesting storylines across the board, right, JD?
Absolutely, Chris. There's a ton of sports. Hockey,
Yep.
Basketball, football, UFC, boxing. There's a bit of everything except baseball this weekend.
Yeah, and maybe no better person to join us here on the Vegas Take, getting you set for your weekend, than our next guest. He is the fine host of Sports X Radio every day here on KDWN from 8 to 10 p.m. He's out live at Legacy Stadium for 4 days a week, and then on Wednesdays he's bouncing around from the Steiner's Pub, where he's doing his great show from there as well, too. Ken Thomson joining us now on the phone lines. Ken, we appreciate the time. How are you doing, my friend?
See, win, baby. Just in the midst of getting ready for the Friday football fiasco, where Sharp actually makes an appearance and puts in his 2 cents with me and Brad Powers on all the college and NFL games. So only about 6 more hours of prep, going over the weather, finishing up on all these injuries that are coming into play as far as, starters for all the teams as well.
Oh, I got to admit, it's
excited.
a top-notch threesome right there. You three guys, you're breaking. And you don't just hit on maybe 1 or 2 or, 5 or 10 games. You guys are breaking down every D1 game that matters going into the weekend. It's good stuff.
And NFL.
Yeah, it is. It's great with JD, man, because, he knows, there's certain games. There's probably about 20 games that he's into. The other ones, I'll take the over, KT.
Exactly.
It's just great, man. It's just awesome, man. It's just he's the third wheel, but it's a great wheel, man. It's a great tricycle to be on. And Brad Powers, of course, several years with over there at Phil Steele, and basically Phil Steele's right-hand man. But Brad's top of the line, man. And so with JD coming in and infusing his opinions, which are great because a lot of times they differ with mine or Brad's. I do know that the guys do owe me, they both owe me major dinner. They're buying tonight because I had UCLA, they had Arizona State.
But of course.
No, I had UCLA with you as well, KT.
What's that?
I had UCLA with you as well, KT.
Oh, was it? Okay, so there's a game that you guys both won against me. I got them all written down because I went back and listened to the archive, Shady. But you did pretty well, man. You held your own.
Yeah, I had a good week.
We actually got the best of BP last week.
And, Brad Powers is extremely talented at what he does. And let's just call what me, you, and Brad have, let's just call it what it is. It's a sports handicapping throuple. That's what it is, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, too. And, and that's the thing. There was a gentleman that came in from Los Angeles last night, and him and his girlfriend, they were outside the studio there as we were finishing up, me and Andy Isco. And I just thought they were looking in at Legacy Stadium, and I went out, and guy said, "Hey, look, I've been listening to you for 8-9 years." He goes, "I live in L.A." He goes, "I just wanted to meet you." So he got a picture there, and he goes, "And you're Andy Isco, right?" He goes, "You're a Thursday, And he's like, and the guy was so ecstatic, but he told me, he goes, "I really appreciate the way that you hit the small conferences because everybody hits the top 25, everybody hits the Power 5, conferences." He goes, "But not a lot of people talk about Hawaii," which is where he was from, or San Jose State, who, I was talking about with Coach Brennan getting that team to 4-4 this year, which is like nobody thought the team's going to win more than 2 games. So I like to, pay attention, to those things. And then, hey, guys, he talked about all these sports coming up. Let's remember UNLV and IP4 Wayne coming up on Tuesday. Only about 100 college basketball games to kick it off on Tuesday night.
Yeah, and talk about there's a couple other big-time matchups, right, on Tuesday going down between some powers that are expected to be in contention for a national championship, right, KT?
Yeah, Kansas and Duke, and then we got Kentucky, Michigan State.
Oh, I've heard of them before. Yeah, I know about those guys.
I think I know who they are. So KT, give me your sleeper team this year to win the college basketball national championship, and give me the team you think actually wins.
Oh boy, you know what? There's a lot of teams right now that are going to have an opportunity. I think it's you're starting to see parity more and more. I mean,
I agree.
You're always going to get those top, those teams we just talked about, those blue blood teams. But that's the whole thing. JD, right now, I'm going through my blue ribbon. I'm going through. It's so tough to get all this work in when you're just dead set in the middle, or well, not the middle, 3/4 of the way into this college football season and the NFL. Actually been doing better in the NFL, although college was a really good week last week. I went 6-1 on my contest plays, and then I actually made some really good money on Michigan, which was my biggest play of the year so far. And I thought they would throttle Notre Dame. I never thought they'd beat them like they did, but very impressive.
That wasn't even close.
Yeah, and then I did come. And here's the thing, because the look-ahead line is about 13.5, with Michigan catching that many against Ohio State. And initially, as we've seen how that line is taken off, I think Michigan's defense is playing that well that they will definitely give Ohio State a game, as long as they don't slip up against any of these teams like Maryland and even the Michigan State game, because Sparty is down. And Chris, you're a big green and white fan. This is one of the worst offenses that I've ever seen Michigan State have. I thought Lewerke was going to improve. It's not that his numbers, ratio-wise aren't better than last year, but my God, man, that team, their offense is like watching paint dry. It really is sad.
And then the blow, of course, this week where, the top linebacker on the team, on defense, that's solid, right? The defense that's kind of been the only saving grace on that team. And now, of course, he's out with apparently performance-enhancing drug issues. So it's not been a banner year, to say the least, for the guys from East Lansing.
Yeah, Joe Bocci, man, not only the leading tackler this year, the leading tackler the last 2 years with 104 tackles last year, 100 the year before as a sophomore. That's a major blow, because you do have Willekes, one of the better defensive linemen in the country, on that defensive line, and then Bocci, the middle linebacker, the signal caller. Man, it doesn't get any worse for Sparty, man. That's why you guys are so happy you're preseason #1 in college hoops. You can't wait for Tuesday.
Exactly, right? Can we turn the page, please, on college football this year for the folks who are Sparty faithful? It's been real tough.
Man, watching this Michigan State team, when the offense, it's not as bad as Northwestern, but it's very, very close. I think Lewerke is like 54% on the year. They don't really have a running back. The defense and the defense is actually decent, but they're on the field so much they can't actually stop anyone, and that's what happened in the game last week against Penn State. But you brought up the Michigan game, and I think that's a great point, KT. I think they lose that game, by 3-7, but it really depends on Shea Patterson. If you had asked me 4 weeks ago, I would have said, Shea Patterson he handles pressure worse than almost any quarterback in college football, but he's been really, really decent handling pressure lately. And I think that offensive line for Michigan is extremely overrated. I like them to be very competitive against Ohio State. I'm glad you brought that game up.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And then you mentioned Northwestern. I mean, you talk about a pathetic offense, and how bad does it get for Northwestern? Their leading receiver, J.J. Jefferson, the only guy that has touchdown receptions for them this year. He has 2.
Yeah.
Nobody else has one. He's out this game against Indiana. How Indiana in Bloomington is not going to beat this team by, 20-plus. Look, I respect the linebacking core. I know Northwestern, they'll get in it. But I'm telling you, Indiana, pretty solid offense there. I expect them to pull away. I can't see Northwestern hanging in that game. The line is 10.5. It's actually dropped a couple points. I think the money's going the wrong way.
So let's talk about a game that a lot of our listeners will relate to. UNLV against Colorado State. The line opened up at 8.5. What's it at now?
Last I saw it was sitting at 9. You had places at 9, 8.5, 9. Let me see if I can find it, because of different shops. But initially, I looked at Colorado State. UNLV, I mean, they really got jobbed at the end of that San Diego State game. Yep. I mean, some really tough calls that didn't go for them. They should have had pass interference call, and then you hit the upright to put the game into overtime. They battled back. They hung in there. Colorado State, though, I watched their game against Fresno State, and they really outplayed Fresno State. So you have a backup quarterback coming in that's feeling comfortable now because he has a couple games under his belt, and that receiving core was solid. And they suspended, their running back, Marvin Kinsey. So you figure, they're in trouble. But who steps up? McElroy replaces him, gets 117 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground, and Colorado State rolls by 10. So it's going to be a tough place. One thing about Fort Collins, and I hope UNLV, their student body, takes note of that, because here's Colorado State. They're 3-5. UNLV's 2-6. And you'll watch. That place will have a great college atmosphere. And I know the stadium's close and all that good stuff and right there. But you'll see them. They'll be into the game. And I think Bobo's done a nice job. I mean, this team, could have easily gone into a shell. But they're playing good, solid, competitive football. So the Rebs better bring their A game, and they got to slow down the run. It's been tough for them. And if they can do that, I think they have a chance to stay in there. Oblad's shown some brilliance at times.
Yeah, he's looked good.
But Yeah, I'm hoping the Rebs can get a W. It's been tough for Tony. There's some games that they probably should have won that they ended up losing, but the deck is definitely stacked against him. And for him to hold on to his job after this season, it's going to be really, really tough just because new stadium and the ultimatum was there. Get bowl eligible. I mean, win 6 games. Doesn't mean you have to go to a bowl, but you got to win 6 games. And he knows it. He's embraced it. And he said, you know what, it is what it is. I'm just going to continue to do my job and do the best that I can to try and, put a solid product on and off the field. And that's what he's doing. Unfortunately, the football's just not rolling his way. He's had some tough luck.
Ken Thomson joining us, host of Sports X Radio. You can catch him Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 p.m. right here on KDWN. He's wired in when it comes to all things, especially college football, college basketball. He's dialed in, too, also on the NFL and the NBA and the NHL as well, too. But we're talking college football. And, Ken, we're looking at 8 games in right now for most teams, right? And people are jockeying for position and possibilities at going to a college football playoff. A couple intriguing games out here on the West Coast this week as well, too. You got the Utes going up to the Pacific Northwest, taking on the Huskies up there, and you also have to match up with the Ducks as they go down to the Coliseum and take on your USC Trojans. Your thoughts on the matchup with Oregon, USC, and of course Utah and Washington, with both the Utes and of course Oregon sitting at 7-1 and right there in the mix.
Yeah, and Washington's still wondering how they lost that game to Oregon. 2 touchdown lead, then a 10-point lead with 6 minutes to go. But got to give the Ducks credit; they came back and. Not only they win, they covered that line by a point. Gosh darn it, lost some money there. Now Washington at home, coming off a bye. But I like this Utah team. Look, their only loss is to Southern Cal. Fink steps in and does a great job because Slovis goes down second play of that game. And Utah not prepared to take on Fink. They have no idea who this guy is really because, Slovis is the guy they watch film on all week. They put him down and out. What happens? SC can't run the ball, but Matt Fink comes right in, and even the first play from scrimmage, he throws a big long gainer. Utah is probably happy that there's no rain because that would be a huge advantage for Washington. It's supposed to be 50 degrees and no rain there. Look, I like Tyler Huntley a lot, and Zach Moss, outstanding running back. They're still going to have to bring their A game. They don't have a lot of great receivers because they lost Covey early in the year.
Yep.
But the defensive line's still good enough to put pressure on Jacob Eason. The running game could be hampered a little bit for Washington. Ahmed is there, their starter, but it looks like Newton will miss and McGrew's questionable, so that takes some depth away.
That's a big deal,
Fuller now is questionable as far as receiving core, and I think he may be able to go. And then Brian and Otten, 2 pretty good tight ends there. For Washington. I think that'll be a really good game, one that I'm staying away from. I respect Brad Powers is on Washington. I understand taking that team at home as a dog, but I took them, similar line, against Oregon, and they floundered down the stretch. Shouldn't have blown a 2-touchdown lead or a 10-point lead with 6 minutes to go, but they did. And when you have 3 Pac-12 losses, it just shows you this is not the same type Husky team. Remember, they lose a guy like Ben Burke-Kirven that had 170 tackles last year. They don't have anybody like that on defense. They lost 9 starters on that side of the ball. For SC, they're so banged up. I mean, you look at their injury report, it looks like the Book of War and Peace. It's ridiculous.
Ouch.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable. But Stephen Carr, I think, will be able to go to help out Christian in the backfield. The receiving core, still St. Brown, Pittman Jr., and Vaughns. And now Drake London stepped up with 7 catches and 85 yards last week. So, yeah, those 4 guys, they're going to move the ball. I think they'll definitely be able to move the ball on this Oregon defense that we heard was so great a few weeks ago. Why was it great? Because they look good against Auburn, but Auburn's offense is pathetic. So that's why they lost to LSU. If their offense was any good, if Bo Nix was any good, they'd have beat LSU because LSU really didn't do much. So, I'm looking at this game. If Herbert takes care of the ball, Verdell is back. He had a huge game, 257 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground last week. Look, they were very fortunate to beat Wazoo, and we said – that Wazoo would cover there. All 3 of us said that on the show last week, and that was easy money. That was the easiest money ever, plus 14, and Wazoo led till the final series of the game. So we're hoping to give you some more good plays, but I think SC can hang in there. I think SC can win the game, but I'll respect Oregon. Probably a game I lean on SC a little bit, but I do look at that injury report. You got Hufanga out and Jackson, and Rector may go. We'll wait and see. The defense has to step up and slow Oregon down a little.
I think it comes down to what cornerbacks for SC play. If Elijah Griffin is playing, if Chris Steele is playing, if Isaac Taylor Stewart are playing, I think those guys are just more talented. Oregon's wide receivers are fine. They have the 5'9" Jalen Redd. They've got Micah Pittman. They haven't recruited as well as SC had, and I take this in consideration when I handicap a game like this. But if those cornerbacks play this weekend, I think SC can win the game outright. And for the Utah-Washington game, To me, it looks like the biggest trap game of the week, kind of like the UCLA-Arizona State game last week. It's kind of on the same plane. You know, Easton's very accurate. They have a good punter. They have a good kicker. I mean, they are solid across the board. They have 4 or 5 wide receivers, and Easton has the arm to get it to those wide receivers. Utah has an unbelievably good defensive line. But again, I look at this SC game with Utah, and I compare how they played against Fink on how they're going to play against Easton. I do kind of agree with Brad, but I might buy it up to 3.5 if I have to from the 3. But it's a game I really don't want to touch. It won't be a huge play by any means.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If Washington can't run, that'll be major. Remember,
Right.
USC, they got outgained. I think in the second half, it was like 200 to like 40 as far as total yard, as far as running the ball. And in fact, SC, I think, only had 34 rushing yards for the entire game. So it was Matt Fink that kind of surprised Utah, and they got some turnovers. Things worked out for them. But Utah's, defense, not just a line to get pressure on Jacob Eason, but also to slow down Ahmed. If you slow down Ahmed, man, they're going to be in a lot of trouble because that's going to put everything squarely on the shoulders of Eason. I don't think he's that guy. He still has another year to go. He's good, but he's not great, and there's a difference. Herbert is still not great, but he's pretty darn good, and he was able to come back and beat Washington and then beat Wazoo last week. So Oregon right now living the charmed life right now.
I agree.
With a couple of victories. We'll see what happens if they beat Troy. I mean, I don't expect them to lose after that. If they don't lose to USC, I think Oregon's got a great shot to run the table. Question is, they do play Utah, and will they play Utah again in that finale? And if they do, it's going to be that'll be a great game. So right now, Utah half game. Well, they're actually a half game behind SC in the win column. Loss column, they're even. But remember, SC of course beat Utah, so Utah needs USC to lose a game, and it would probably bode well for them if they lose to Oregon, because then if Utah can take out Oregon and go unblemished from here on out, they're only going to have that one loss, and that actually keeps a playoff hope, a glimmer of hope, alive for the Utes.
Let's slide east and get both JD and also KT, your take on a couple of matchups. You got SMU taking on Memphis. You wouldn't expect this to be like a marquee game, but it is, man. SMU sitting at 8-0, best team probably since 1985 for this program, and they're taking on a Memphis team that's 7-1. And we're talking the American Conference right there. And then, of course, something that's fond to my heart. I've had a chance to head up to Jacksonville, KT and JD, and check out the world's biggest cocktail party as Florida takes on Georgia. This is an opportunity for Florida's secondary, I think, against Georgia and Jake Fromm. Fun matchup there. What your thoughts, KT, first on the matchup with the Gators and the Bulldogs, and, of course, SMU taking on Memphis?
All right, let me start with SMU Memphis because there's a key injury right now that is huge. If Reggie Roberson does not go for SMU, and he was in a walking boot after the game last week, he's listed as questionable. I just actually went to injury to check it out. Still game time decision potentially. If he does not go, that puts all the pressure on Proch, their other receiver. Those two guys between them, 15 touchdowns, 104 receptions. But they have to have, Bouchel needs Roberson to be on that field for them to have a chance. First off, game day is going to be there, and Memphis is a great non-Power 5 environment when that team is playing well. They lose their running back early, but who steps in? Kenneth Gainwell. This guy's got 11 touchdowns on the ground, 3 by the airways. Brady White's a guy that gets it. He's going to take his time and stand back there and throw the football. He's got DeMonte Coxey, one of the better receivers. Gibson's pretty good as well. Those two guys, I think they're going to be open. I think the crowd's going to be huge in this game. And SMU, they're undefeated. Give Sonny Dykes a ton of credit, but they're very fortunate to beat Tulsa in 3 overtimes, a game they trailed by 3 scores. Even Houston, a backup quarterback, they struggled. They were outgained last week by 150 yards against Houston. So, I'm not sold on SMU. The record looks good. It's a great story. Dykes taking that team from the depths of despair and really elevating their play. But I think Memphis is going to get them. And then the Florida-Georgia game, here's the thing with Georgia. Right now, how good does their little 6-point win against Notre Dame at home look? Not too good, right? And that's what I was saying about Georgia. They have a mammoth offensive line. You got DeAndre Swift, one of the best running backs in the country. Fromm's a very solid and efficient passer. But who are the receivers? I mean, Cager's banged up. Pickens, Blaylock, Robertson. Do you even know any of these guys, Chris? You don't know any of these guys. You know why? Because they're not worth a crap compared to the receiving core that Georgia's had.
It's so true, my friend. So, you are dialed in.
Here's the thing. If Georgia's able to control the ball on the ground and run the ball, they'll win the game. But if not, Kyle Trask has shown that he can throw the ball around. He's got some decent receivers. He gets back Kadarius Toney, who's back. Zuniga and Greenard are both back as far as the linebacking and defensive end. They do miss David Reese, the second linebacker, who's out, and that's a major loss. But Pearson Pirine on the ground. I think the Gators have a great chance to win this game. I don't know how Georgia's a 6.5-point favorite. 73 degrees, perfect weather. Going to be one of those can't miss games. Again, if Georgia controls the line of scrimmage, and they have one of the best, if not the best offensive line in football, that'll take pressure off Fromm, because let's face it, Fromm's not throwing the ball to anybody that seems to be wide open this year. It's a totally different Georgia team, and they're living on their past from the last 2 years to stay inside the top 5 like they are. I think Florida exposes them, and I think Florida wins the game.
Ken Thomson joining us live here on the Vegas Take. There's never enough time for you, my friend. We bring in a lot of college football there. We didn't even get into the NFL yet.
We could do this for 4 hours.
You know what, though?
Did you see that Quan Alexander's out for the season for the Niners, Ken?
Yeah, that's a major blow.
That's a huge blow.
And I'm just glad the Niners won last night, just won, because I have Arizona under their win total. But Murray and the guys never quit. They're playing good ball.
Yeah, they look good. I agree with that. Ken, who's your number one team in the country right now, college football?
Oh boy, man! I'd have to say, realistically, it's definitely not LSU. If you give me one team, it's Ohio State. If you give me one team, I think that's going to win it all. Best team in football, Ohio State. That includes Bama, includes Clemson.
Ken, we appreciate the time. We're up against it, but never fear, because he's going to be on the air tonight, 8 to 10 p.m. live from Legacy Stadium.
And that will
himself, along with J.D. Sharp and Brad Powers, they're going to break down every game. You can follow him also on Twitter at SportsX Radio and at Ken Thomson on Twitter.
You guys rock, and Chris, your Lions are going down Sunday.
It's a big game. It's the first time. I think the Raiders haven't been back at the Coliseum since like 2017, right?
Long time.
It's going to be tough.
It's not fun, as Christians will tell you, to face the Lions in a Coliseum. That's for sure.
That's true. That's so true. Ken, have a great weekend. We appreciate you spending some time on your Friday, my friend.
You guys, man, doing a great job, man. How cool is it to not have Shapiro on a Friday? It's like a 3-day weekend for the listeners.
I'll be waiting for the texts from him later on. He'll still find a way to badger me. He can do it.
Later, guys.
Thanks, Ken.
See you, KT.
Ken Thomson, host of SportsX Radio here on the Vegas Take. When we come back, Brian Salmon's going to join us, sports director, Channel 3. Breakdown. It's fight weekend, folks. Both MMA and boxing. Big-time matchups as we continue on the Vegas Take on your Friday.